you know, I'd finished school and I was kind of jaded by school. You know, they kind of sucked the fun out of what I was doing. So I really wanted to try again, you know, I'd like to get back into why I was making music in the first place. I was conceived at a music festival.
What?
Yeah. So I grew up, you know, being a bit of a manic depressive, and you know, I had a lot of issues with depression and anxiety and panic attacks. I learned so much about what it is to be a producer through these guys, and especially Theophilus London. Like, we spent so much time just like growing as musicians together.
Hi, this is Lauren Engel. Today I'm here with MACHINEDRUM.
What's up?
So you're born in, is it Hickory or like Eden in North Carolina?
Yeah, I was born in Eden in North Carolina, but I don't remember it. I think my parents moved out of there to a little town outside of Winston-Salem, and when I was 1 or 2, and then we moved to Hickory where I grew up.
Are they from North Carolina?
Yeah, both my parents
so
are from
all
North
your
Carolina.
family, like all the family base is there?
Yeah, the family base is there.
And so you're from like a really musician family, right? Your grandpa was in like was a country band?
Yeah, he still is.
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
that's
he
so
plays
cool.
every Saturday night.
So what?
Yeah,
so cool.
he plays at the Hillbilly Hideaway outside of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It's the coolest thing. Like, you go and you get a meal, like a family style meal, and then when you pay for your meal, you basically get a free concert. So you go down to the barn down beside the restaurant and you get a free show. My grandpa plays the pedal steel, and he's the leader of the band now, so he's always having to find new singers and drummers and stuff whenever people can't play on that Saturday, so it keeps him really busy.
And your parents, they're both musicians too?
Not so much. I mean, my dad plays like
you
some
got him,
different
like a
instruments.
Bagpipe, right?
Yeah. That was a bad mistake.
He played it too much.
We got him like a practicing a beginner's bagpipe kind of thing, which is just the pipe. So you like learn how to play the notes. God, that thing was so annoying. It was insane. Well, my mom, I grew up with a baby grand in the house, a baby grand piano, and it was my mom's. She still has it. She got it from her father, my grandfather, before he passed away when she was like 18, I think. And so yeah, I had that growing up in the house, and I didn't really have formal lessons, but you know, my parents were always listening to music, and I was always listening to the radio, and they let me watch MTV when I was little, and I was just obsessed with music. So I would go to the piano and try to replay whatever I heard. I would like learn it by ear. Even if I played like a bastardized version of it, it was still like, you know, it was ear training, and I didn't even know it.
Didn't you write a song about your babysitter? A babysitter.
Babysitter. Yeah, that was the first song that I ever wrote. I'm not gonna sing it for you.
So what were your parents' careers then?
My father was and still is a CFO for the furniture industry, and my mom was a teacher back in the day. Yeah, so she's taught a lot of different subjects, but mostly like computers and career-oriented kind of stuff, but in technology.
You called yourself more like a hippie family though, right?
Yeah, definitely.
In what way?
I mean, they're like corporate hippies. Like, my dad will wear a suit and tie and go to his, you know, day job, and then come home and throw on a tie-dye shirt and listen to, you know, like Moody Blues or something, or like Doobie Brothers, or like Crosby, Stills and Nash. And I mean, I was conceived at a music festival.
What?
Yeah. So if that is any testament to my parents' hippiness, there it is. Right there.
Yeah, well, you got into music because your mom like gave you the hand-me-down laptop.
Oh yeah, so my parents would always have, from early on, like in the 90s, they would get a home computer, and whenever they would upgrade, they would give me their older one, and I would just learn how to make music however I could with it, from anything from whatever software came with the computer to finding free software online and just doing what I could do with it.
You were in a lot of bands, like jazz band, marching band.
Yeah.
In school. You also did the, what was it, like your football team's like song with all the instruments?
Yeah. So yeah, I was in a bunch of different bands, high school related, like in the marching band and the jazz band, concert band, and then I was in some ensembles outside of high school. At our local university had a percussion program, so I was in the percussion ensemble, African ensemble, steel drum ensemble, some others. But yeah, I ended up writing, you know how when the marching band goes out into the field and the drum line's like playing like a beat for them to march to go into the field? Those are called cadences, and I wrote a couple of the cadences on my computer. Like I would have the bass drum part, the quads and the snare and everything like in their own channels, and then I would I wasn't really that good at notating it, so I gave it to our drum instructor and he wrote it all out. It was so cool. It was like my first real experience at seeing other people, you know, perform or just react to something I wrote in general.
Were you known in school as like the musician? Or how do you describe yourself back then?
I guess I was, because I just thought that I was like the weird music kid, and I didn't really realize how much respect I had from my peers until my senior year, when I got voted most talented superlative. And I was like, oh my god, it meant so much to me. And I had no idea that, you know, so many of the kids that I grew up with like respected me like that. So it was really nice. And you know, I ended up putting out my first album when I was 18.
Oh wow.
And so it was the last half of my senior year. And so to just be able to like bring a CD, you know, because back then it was like, if you had a CD, it was so cool. Like I, you know, would bring a CD to class to show people, and they were freaking out. And yeah, that kind of changed a lot for me, because I grew up, you know, being a bit of a manic depressive, and you know, I had a lot of issues with depression and anxiety and panic attacks. You know, my parents tried different medication and it wasn't really working for the most part. And then, you know, when I found this acceptance through music, and especially through people like my peers that I didn't necessarily meet eye to eye with my music tastes, to find that validation through them just meant everything. And it gave me like fuel from a very early age to like do whatever I wanted, you know. Made me feel like I was on the right path.
Yeah, it's really good.
That, coupled with the support of my parents, was just, you know, it's invaluable.
And you were listening to, what is it called, like Wax Tracks back then?
I was listening to some stuff on Wax Tracks, like KMFDM, Front 242. I listened to a lot of like industrial music, like Frontline Assembly and Skinny Puppy, Nitzer Ebb, Ministry. I loved Ministry. Still do. I still listen to a lot of that stuff.
But were your peers making this type of music, or you were kind of like talking to people online through, what's it called, IRC, the chat? Yeah.
So I spent most of my time finding out about music. Woo!
It was like a little kid on a scooter.
I found out about most of the music that I got into online, and it was I mean, I know that doesn't sound like a new concept now, but back in the day, you know, when there's dial-up modems and no real concept of social media, you know, you had to dig a bit deeper to find out about music. So I forget how I found out about IRC, but I think you know, it was in the day of chat rooms, and I think it was over finding you know, other people that were into the same kind of music on AOL or whatever. Yeah. So I think I just ended up doing some sort of web search for chat rooms or something like that, and then IRC came up, and yeah, it led to a lot. It ended up leading me to my first album deal. Yeah, because I was friends with Gabe from Merc Records, who put out my first, I don't know, like 5 or 6 albums.
How old were you when the first one happened?
18.
Oh,
yeah.
Respect that one.
Yeah. So it was really cool, and you know, it was through him and a lot of his friends and different people that I met, like, that were all sort of connected in that same circle, that I found out about so much music. And you know, it was such an amazing time for me, and it was unfortunate that I couldn't share a lot of that with my friends. I had some friends that I could, you know, share the music I was getting into with, but for the most part, they didn't get it. Like, the closest that I could relate with music with friends was like 9 Inch Nails, Daft Punk, maybe Aphex Twin, but not even. That was even too extreme for a lot of people. So mostly, like, anytime I made music with friends, it was rock, and I would play guitar or play keys, and we would cover stuff like Smashing Pumpkins or Weezer, or like Hum, or a bunch of different 90s alternative Nirvana.
Was your first moniker Machinedrum?
No. I had a few that I was using, and then I had this one called Syndrome that was actually my first album, was put out under that name. It was more of a like straight IDM kind of thing, which is like pretentious genre name, but you know, it was what I was into at the time, just doing weird, non-repetitive beats, stuff that wasn't, you know, just stuff that was a bit more outside of the box, a bit more experimental. But the Machinedrum name I was playing around with at the time, with kind of drum and bass stuff that I was working on, and like breakcore and like jungle inspired stuff. And then I kind of made this shift to an exploration of the relationship between drum and bass and hip hop, and that's when a light bulb kind of went off for me, and made me want to seriously focus on making a Machinedrum album, which Merc Records ended up putting out as well. And yeah, that ended up getting such a good response from everyone that I just kept pursuing it, and then the project just got more and more diverse to the point where now I feel like I could put out a Machinedrum record and it can sound however I want it to, even if I may lose some people. I'm like, at this point, like 10 albums deep, I'm already used to losing some people with albums, because, you know, people have their own ideas of like what they want you to sound like, and I'm just gonna give them whatever I'm feeling at the moment. So.
Yeah, was it called like Make It 1-2? One of the
1-2-1-2.
1-2-1-2.
Yeah.
That one, you were trying to be more like pop leaning with it,
yeah.
right? And it was kind of not like what you expected in the end.
Well, I think I was maybe I spent too long on it, I think, was the reality of it all. You know, it was an experimental phase for me, you know, trying to make pop music that I was into, something that would bridge the gap between the world I was coming from and this whole other, you know, radio world. You know, I was working with artists like Theophilus London, Jesse Boykins III, Mellow X, Mickey Fax, like this whole like amazing crew out of New York. And you know, even if that album wasn't as successful as it could have been, I developed relationships with these different artists that they're still valuable to me. You know, I still work with Jesse Boykins III all the time. Like we're super close. He was in my wedding. You know, Mellow X is super tight. Like I just, you know, I learned so much about what it is to be a producer through these guys, and especially Theophilus London. Like we spent so much time just like growing as musicians together, and learning what it was to have that dynamic between a producer and an artist, and you know, like how we define that and how other people define that. And I don't know, I just like learned so much through the whole process.
Did you go to Full Sail in Florida? Mm-hmm. So after you finished high school, you went straight to Florida?
Yeah, no, after I finished high school, I stuck around in North Carolina for a bit and saved up some money, worked at like a coffee shop and had a data entry job, and because I wanted to go to Full Sail, but it was just so expensive. And my parents, you know, I don't come from a lot of money or anything, so they basically told me if I could meet them halfway with the tuition, that they would let me go there. So it wasn't immediate, but yeah, maybe a few years after high school.
What kind of clicked to you to go? Because people were already catching on and like finding your music, right? Like, could you have like just not gone to college, or?
I could have. It was at an interesting time because, you know, I wasn't necessarily making money from what I was doing. I was making a little bit, and playing some shows, but it wasn't at a time like now where electronic music has this acceptance in the US and across the world, but specifically the US. Like back in the late 90s and early 2000s, it was really just, like electronic music just didn't have that understanding that it does now, and the acceptance. And I think that things may have been a lot different for me if the environment was like it is now. I think I may have experienced a bit more early success. But either way, I ended up going to Full Sail as sort of a backup plan of sorts, but that was related to what I was into. And at the end of the day, I did end up learning a lot there. It made me get a lot more serious about what I was doing and understand the ins and outs of working in a studio, which I had no idea what I was doing. If I'd gone from what I knew in high school straight into a studio, I would have not known what I was doing at all. So it was nice having that hands-on experience at school, for sure. But by the time I actually ended up having to take time off from school because I had a tour in Australia and in Japan, and it was my first time in Australia at the time, and so I had to like talk to the dean of the school because they had a really strict attendance policy where if you miss a certain amount of classes, even like 2 classes, you would have to pay for that course again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was pretty serious. Wow. Yeah, and so I had to talk to the dean to like explain. I like brought my CDs and vinyl and like to show him that I was like really serious about what I was doing and that it wasn't just like some random, you know, thing that was going on. But yeah, he was chill about it.
And then right after you graduated, you went straight to New York, and that's how you met everyone, or? I
didn't go straight there. I ended up sticking around in Orlando a bit longer because I made some solid friends there, some friends that I'm still friends with today and still collaborating with today. I really got to deeply explore this sort of experimental side of myself when I was there. You know, I had a lot of friends that were in like different noise bands and indie bands and electronic kind of things, and you know, everyone was collaborating with each other. We were doing performance art, we're making like physical art, just throwing these wild events where everyone was like dressing up in weird costumes and making like the most abstract music, and it was just so much fun. And I didn't want to leave it right away, but eventually I was like, okay, I can't just stay in Orlando and party all the time and make weird music for the rest of my life. And, you know, because I was basically sleeping on couches at that point.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because you know, I was just really getting deep into exploration with music, and I you know, I'd finished school, and I was kind of jaded by school. You know, they kind of sucked the fun out of what I was doing, so I really wanted to try again, you know, like to get back into why I was making music in the first place. But at a certain point, IE Merge, aka Merge, he's a DMC world champ. He is this amazing turntablist who's like world champion, and he approached me to do a battle record with him. And through that whole process of making the battle record and sending him demos for it, he decided he wanted to start a record label. And I kind of helped start it with him, essentially. And that's how I ended up getting involved with people like Theophilus London and Jesse Boykins III and everyone. Because he like saw this potential in me that I could be a producer and like work with artists, and I had never really had that confidence before. So he was just kind of like, all right, get your ass up to New York, we're gonna put you to work. And so I did, and I kind of dropped everything and moved there, and I'm so glad I did. It was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
What clicked to you to go to Berlin for a bit?
I ended up going to Berlin because even then, at the time in like the late 2000s, US still wasn't on board with electronic music, and if they were, it was more like, I don't know, like Ed Banger type stuff, which is cool, but it just wasn't what I was doing. But just, you know, like kind of the whole blog house thing, or I don't know, or like really cheesy dubstep kind of stuff. So I was getting booked all the time in Europe, and it just made more sense for me to post up there. I had a bunch of friends in Berlin, I still do. It's a central kind of place in Europe, so it's easy to get around. It was so cheap at the time. Still is kind of cheap compared to LA or New York, but yeah, it was amazing. I'm so glad I did that. Again, it was an opportunity for me to go from that sort of serious pop producer mindset that I was getting into in New York and get back into my experimental roots. And that's where I ended up writing Vapor City and, you know, kind of disconnecting from the pop world for a bit, which I think ended up being such a good thing for me. You know, I ended up signing to Ninja Tune at the time, and you know, all these new opportunities rose out of me, I guess not trying so hard to make something that would make money, you know? Because anytime I try really hard to turn my art and my music into something that's gonna pay the bills, if I'm like too active about it, it ends up like watering down the music, or it's not as satisfying, and then as a result I don't end up making that much money from it because, you know, it's not real. And so when I just had this period of time where I didn't have to pay much in rent, I could just kind of do whatever I wanted musically, that's when I ended up like signing a publishing deal and signing a record deal and touring more than I had ever toured in my life. And
how long ago was that, like the record deal?
I signed with Ninja in 2012 and then put out Vapor City in 2013.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's about to be a 5-year anniversary.
How would you say your music has changed since the early songs you made?
I think it's definitely matured. I have a lot better idea of what I'm doing now, whereas back then I was just kind of throwing stuff at a wall and seeing if it would stick. I didn't really understand any concepts about, you know, EQing or dynamics, everything that goes into making a track like sound professional. So I think I understand a lot of that now. I think I've embraced musicianship in my songs a bit more, whereas before I was much more reliant on just programming out stuff. Even though I played guitar and played piano, I was like super reliant on just, you know, programming in beats and melodies and stuff. So I think now I'm, you know, super comfortable with sitting down and playing the piano as the first thing that I do when I write a track. And, you know, I'm much more comfortable with adding instruments and bringing in musicians to collaborate with me. And yeah, I guess that would be the biggest difference.
Yeah. How would you say you've grown as a person compared to when you were younger?
I have a lot more confidence, have a lot more respect for myself and respect for my music, and understanding of, you know, what it can do for people. And I think that, you know, that has definitely made me a better person. And, you know, I've gotten a lot out of my shell, outside of my shell, and like broken out of that whole sort of protective, isolated hermit kind of thing that I grew up in. And, you know, become much more social. And, you know, yeah, I think, you know, it's just like becoming accepting of myself a lot more.
What kind of advice do you have for people going through depression or anxiety?
I think for anyone going through depression, just know that the voice inside your head that's telling you this crap, just, it's not you. Like the voice that is screaming at you all the time, all these like negative thoughts, it has nothing to do with who you actually are. Like what you are as a person is done through your actions and through the things that you say to other people. So as you get, you know, more in touch with yourself and block out those thoughts, you're able to, you know, embrace love and embrace other people around you, the people that are bringing you up instead of bringing you down. And, you know, I found a lot through meditation. I've been able to center myself and deal with a lot of the negative thoughts that come my way, and just thoughts in general, just like stressful thoughts or anything that I shouldn't be consuming myself with. I've gotten a lot better at letting those thoughts just pass through me through meditation. And so I definitely recommend that. I wish I had gotten into meditation a lot earlier. I think they should teach it in schools, honestly. I feel like it's a, you know, if you're younger, you're definitely more accepting of those kind of things. But as you get older, you have different kind of misconceptions about things that are outside of your comfort zone. And, you know, we're a lot more jaded and yeah, just a lot more skeptical and cynical about that kind of stuff. So I think if that was taught in schools, like, I think we would cure depression within like a lot of kids, you know. And I think especially today, like, people are constantly looking at their phones and constantly worrying about what other people think about them online and getting likes and shares and all of that. And, you know, you can easily lose yourself in all of that by focusing too much on your second self, which is your online self. And I think it's really important to take a moment and recognize where you're at in this moment and just find yourself at peace with who you are, and just don't think about everything else that's going on in the world, and just be happy that you're living and you're breathing. And, you know, a lot of times I'll wake up in the morning and I'll just go through this whole thought process in my head before the chaos comes in of the world, that I'm thankful that I can see, I'm thankful that I can breathe, that I can hear, that I can touch, that my legs work, that my arms work, that my hands work. I'm thankful that I have my family. I'm thankful that I have my wife. And then it just spreads from there. I just start thinking about everything and everyone that I'm thankful for. And if I start my day like that, it's really hard to bring me down.
I love that.
Yeah, I think it's important to be thankful first thing in the day, because otherwise it's really easy to forget a lot of the things that we take for granted.
What does love mean to you?
I think love is an energy. Love is something that surrounds us and connects us. And I think if we do everything with love as the intention, then you will lead a very fulfilled life. I think you'll make everyone around you happier. You'll make yourself happier. Your relationships will flourish. You'll become more successful. I think if you do everything out of love, you really can't make any mistakes. I mean, of course you may make a bad decision, but then if you've done it out of love, at least you can grow out of that.
Mm-hmm. What do you love about your wife's personality?
I love that Lexi makes me laugh all the time. She always, anytime she sees me being way too serious, she knows exactly how to get me out of my head. She just makes me learn to love life by not taking it so seriously all the time, and to just enjoy every moment, and to not be afraid to be silly, and to come up with characters and accents and and all the different things that are just sort of bring joy to our lives and other people's lives. And yeah,
I love that. Last question, what do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for inspiring people and healing people through music.
I love that. This is awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much.